I am so excited to be able to come to you once more and be able to share with you my thoughts and contribute to our process of evolution and enlightenment. And I'm going to start, as I always do. I am Tigress Sydney Acute McDaniel, bringing to you absolutely live people, every Sunday at 4 p.m., Evolve Weekly. I love to begin with my affirmation. May I not further divide and instead enlarge our thought and our unity and understanding. Okay? So we're going to jump right in because I am going to pull back all the layers of the new term and considerably antiquated term, Black conservatives. And the reason why I call it antiquated is because, of course, as we build upon and we create imagined communities, and some of you should remember these terms because we're going to always go over terms, because the more you know, the more. I shouldn't even have to finish the end of that saying, right? Okay. Because we got to do better, friends. We cannot continue on the path of discord. It's not going to work. We cannot continue on the path of promoting fallacies. It doesn't serve any of us well, even for those who would promote the fallacy and try to perpetuate it into perpetuity. And again, you have to, you see the words perpetrate, right? Or perpetrate and perpetuate and into perpetuity. It's like there was already an intention to always be the person in the room to instigate trouble, the imp. And so it makes a lot of sense that there have been parallels to biblical parables and other religious parables as to that particular body, which is often represented by Satan, right? Or an evil being or a demon, a what? An antagonist to the ever-present, ever-loving, ever-knowing, all that I'm not stuff, right? God, the light and the dark. I'm telling you, there have been innumerable studies on this matter in and of itself. And if you haven't seen the intent, the motive behind it before, I'm hoping that through this session today that you see just how I keep reiterating and have for many moons, and I can do that because I'm 43, so I'm not a youngin. And it's okay to be a youngin too. Enjoy it. But I'm trying to tell you, when you get to this age and you did it right, friends, you're going to love this age from 40 and 50 and above. Hey, you're going to love it. And don't forget to send me some well wishes on December 5th. Plug for my birthday. Yay. Okay, so let's get back to being serious. And I am being very serious about my birthday. So don't take that any other way than that's serious. That's a blessing. I'll be 44. That's a blessing. Okay. But we really have to get well beyond this black versus white. You've heard individuals who are part of the colloquial or the nomenclature white people tell you that there is no such thing as white pride, and they've explained it. And yes, Black Americans, we have assumed the title of Black because, of course, there was relevance because we didn't want to be called colored. We didn't want to be called Negro. We have pulled our way from those stereotypes and that nomenclature to assume the title of Black. having some difficulty with trying to figure out how do we can't just all call ourselves, well, we can, because all humans are effectually African, but some have really taken great issue to being kind of lumped into a group of people that, if we all have these characteristics, then we are all descendants from Africa. And now there's been more discussion about different countries in Africa, different tribes and subcultures. And we don't want to just close the book on our culture altogether. It exists the same way for those who are colloquially or in the nomenclature called white. So why do you think that they continue to perpetuate the white versus black dilemma? The white versus black epic war, the endless war. When in all reality, of course, we know there is racism. Please understand the links that I'm making here. And yes, unfortunately for us Black Americans, we do have an issue with the white agenda, quote unquote. But these are terms that we have assigned to it, because the reality is, no matter how much we want to conform, and even if you don't want to use the term conform, if you want to be able to articulate the infinitely and increasingly seemingly endless battle between white and Black America, you do have to use that nomenclature. But in all reality, not every person who would be considered by their physical traits as part of the white America, not all of them side with the white racist agenda or the white supremacist agenda. Okay. And you wonder, why is she talking about this? Because this makes some sense. She said she was going to talk about Black conservatives. I am. Aha. Aha. All right, here we go. So I am huge on terminology, because I want us to be able to have these conversations, and we should be able to revisit these conversations and not have to worry if everyone is on the same page. So we need terminology to do that. That's what our terminology helps us with, our diction, our definitions, right? Okay, so this is what we're going to do, because this is how our intent is to evolve and enlighten. And this includes me as well. I'm not just going to sit here and just necessarily be the informant or your spiritual guide or your enlightenment guide through life or your evolution. I'm not your life coach. This is not what my intent is. My intent instead is for us to grow together, for us to have more understanding together, understand each other's perspectives, and then realize, because there is a line there, and that line is called truth. And truth colloquially could care less about your story or mine, to be honest, because it's rooted in exactly that which is, period. Not anyone's interpretation, not anyone's emotional feelings about it, not anyone's religious preference about it, the truth. And this is why understanding also law or legislation can be so difficult. Not only for disenfranchised communities who don't often get full access to that legal education, but often to individuals who are in the seats right now and governing our country, governing our cities, governing our counties, governing our states. It is vital that we elect individuals who know what their empowerment is under legislation. So that's knowing What are your responsibilities as a governor? And this is no slight to Governor Roy Cooper, because he's been exercising and displaying his full awareness of his empowerment, his responsibilities, his authority, and his limitations that are set by his office. But there are too many who are in these seats, and if you were to ask them right now, if we had a forum right now, they would have absolutely no clue. There are still individuals, and some of you have been to the event where I've done it. I've just posed a very simple question, and it's been taken so combatively. What are your responsibilities as a member of the Board of Commissioners? What are you responsible for? What authority do you have? What legislation can you change? What ordinances can you change? What ordinance can you ratify? And oftentimes, many of them could not answer the questions. Or they would answer the questions very arrogantly, believing, I guess, that I would pose a question like that in an open public forum like that and would not have an answer. So they proceeded to lie. And I just pulled out my iPad, which I carried at every event. Some of you, if you're in the Charlotte area, you know that this iPad has been on a journey with me. It's been on a journey with me, and I've even passed it around to show you the city budget once before. Actually, I think twice before, during 2 different campaign cycles, right? And I just pull it up. I pull up the North Carolina General Statutes right here on this. It's live. It's not off. In fact, I'm using it for my notes. I've got notes everywhere. I told you I'd like to be prepared, and we've got a lot to talk about. All right. But in all seriousness, then I just read straight from North Carolina General Statutes. And then I not just read, but I provide the reference. And not just provide the reference, but again, I pass it through. You look. It has nothing to do with the Tigress McDaniel. It completely precedes me. My birth, my feelings, my religion, my thoughts, everything. It really has absolutely nothing to do with the Tigress McDaniel. It is binding legislation. And oftentimes the people that are in these seats have absolutely no clue. They couldn't tell you the chapter. They should, at the very least, be able to have a working knowledge of the chapter and the statutes, because you know your subsections, that directly relate to their particular seat. So, okay. Maybe the governor shouldn't necessarily know everything that the mayor, well, no, that's not a good example. We could say it vice versa, even though I assert that they should be. But let's say you are, you're working this out, and I'm talking about you charlatans and people around the nation and maybe even around the world who are within the sound of my Facebook broadcast, within the reach. And maybe you're working on your expectations. You're working on your holding these agents of law, agents of government accountable, right? In the seats that they're in. So you're like, okay, well, Tigress, give me a second, but I'm going to try to hold our city council and the mayor accountable right now. I want to learn this incrementally, and I'm with you 1,000%. But let's start with the mayoral office. Sure, no problem at all. So if we start there, then no, maybe you're not immediately where some of us other individuals are, and we're like, okay, well, the mayor should know what a governor does. Now, when we get to the president's level, the president should know what all of these people do. House of Representatives, Senate, the Congress in toto, and that's I-N, next word, T-O-T-O. It's just Latin for in total. That's it. No big jump there. Should know what the Secretary of State does. Secretary of Defense. housing, all education, all these things at the top level, and then should know what the states do because they're in the position for that. They are the highest fiduciary for the country. Aside from, of course, the Congress, which has more prevailing power, which I've clarified with you all once before, but we're getting into this black conservative thing. Just trust me. Please trust me. All right. So your mayor should know whether or not they have enforcement authority to fire a police chief, to fire and hire a police chief, to fire and hire a city attorney, to fire and hire a city manager. Your mayor that you all not so efficiently elected, we'll call it that, she's not aware. She's not aware of these things. Nor in my great assertion, which I asserted through the campaign, so this is no new information, and I asserted it to her as well, in both private conversation and public at these campaign forums. You're not. You don't seem to have the people's best interests in mind. Who is it that you're working for? What is your motive? And she's made it pretty clear, the Republican Party as a whole. And the part of the Republican Party that we know is the stinky stuff. The part of the Republican Party that would try to pull childish or doltish tricks with our state legislature while stepping out of session, turning off the lights, and acting as though they have all left the session, and then not fully closing out the session and fraudulently continuing the session while Democrats have left the building, believing the session to have been dismissed properly by what? Parliamentary, procedure, right? Those type of Republicans who would then hold a vote and make decisions knowingly, maliciously in the absence of their Democratic colleagues. Okay. This is why the confusion persists. And we're gonna chip away at that confusion today. All right, so fallacies, terms, oxymorons. So fallacies, and I'm going to read this because I want to, again, we're going to get on the same page. That's my goal. If you're watching this and if you're following this and if you intend to grow, I believe that this is the right place for you, okay? And I'm here with you. And if you have any questions and you're joining in, please, please, please go ahead and comment them. Please share them. I am more than welcome to answer any of your questions live. If you have comments that you wish to add on for the betterment and the enhancement and the enlargement of all of our thought, understanding, and appreciation of the concepts that we're going over, please share. If you want to be featured on Evolve Weekly, please let a sister know. It's all available. Okay, so fallacies. Fallacies are common errors in reasoning that will undermine the logic of your argument. Fallacies can be either illegitimate arguments or irrelevant points and are often identified because they lack evidence that supports their claim. Okay. So if you recall, during the onset of the pandemic, there were a lot of conspiracy theories going around. And I quickly chimed in. I chimed in because the term conspiracy theory gets used so improperly and mindlessly. So the derivation of conspiracy is a legal term, and it occurs when two or more parties plot actions on the commission of a crime. Okay? And the commission, commit, right? It's just same word, different tense, right? So you got commission, to commit a crime. Verb tense, noun tense, right? Okay, here we go. We're there. We're there. Grammar, people, grammar. Okay. A theory, we're going, because I'm with you. Because I've gone over it, but I'm going to read it directly from the dictionary. I've done it before without reading it from the dictionary, so here we go. Supposition, and you already know how I feel about supposition because that's different from an assumption. And there's a colloquial assumption, and then there's supposition, right? And then there is an academic assumption. When you all talk about conspiracy theories, don't even get it twisted. Don't even try to play my face or play the face of your fellow Americans. You are not talking about an academic assumption. Academic assumptions are the things that we include in our research or our discussions, analysis, that are factors or determinants important to that analysis or that subject matter, okay? So they would be facts, if you will, academic assumptions. When we talk about assumptions colloquially, when you just chit-chatting with your friend, you talking about somebody assuming something, you make an ass out of you and me and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's totally different. That type of assumption is supposition. But y'all are out here saying that, hey, don't assume, don't draw conclusions. When you draw conclusions and blah, 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 blah. But you are tossing these theories around like they are gold. Like you're Oprah. You get a theory and you get a theory and you get a theory. Yeah, everybody gets a theory. It's supposition. It's the type of assumption by which an ass is made out of you and me, right? All right. Oh, boy. And it can be a system, as it says, system of ideas intended to explain something. But again, it's still based on that type of assumption. So a conspiracy theory stands to reason it can only be a conspiracy theory if it is not true. If something is actually, if you suspect that Trump is committing treason and planning a coup, it doesn't really stand to reason that that would qualify as a conspiracy theory because he's actually doing it. We're seeing him carry out steps and conspire. He's conspiring. He's getting people to agree voluntarily or involuntarily with his conspired plot, his plan to carry out further steps toward the fruition of a coup, right? And it's unclear if he intends it to be violent or not. Now, the definition of a coup is, of course, that it is violent, but so we don't know what all is entailed, but we do know that to say that Trump is not wanting to concede and planning how he can stay in office and planning a coup, that does not qualify as a conspiracy theory because they're facts. We at least see that the steps towards that are reality. So that can't be a conspiracy theory, much like a Black conservative. That term is an oxymoron. And I'm not calling Black conservatives morons. You only know that which you know until you know more, right? So please do not, and again, I'm going to reiterate, my goal through Evolve Weekly is that same affirmation. And my affirmation is to not cause further divide and to enlarge our thought and enlightenment and unity. Understanding and appreciation for one another and getting on the same page. Okay, I believe in a revised American code and I believe in a revised Black Code. I also believe that Ice Cube's Black Contract with America is relevant. It may not have everything in it that we need, and it may not have been at the right time. I concur. You should see my tweets in that same regard. I have my contentions. I have my concerns. But all in all, go on, Ice Cube, do your thing. I'm here. I'm ready for it. I'm here for it all day long. Okay? So a conspiracy theory, okay, no. If it's true, friends, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's reality. So that kind of helps you in your process of understanding and dividing truth from mess, from confusion, from sensational topics, from Facebook posts that just are just full of purpose of just, they're bored. People are bored, or they're imps, right? Instigators. What did I tell you about? That want to continue to instigate this white versus Black agenda, when it's much, much more layered than that. Much, much more. And they're doing that because there has been an intention to create and instigate another civil war. Confederates were not content with losing and the direction of the country thereafter. And we see that with Jim Crow laws and the fact that they did not concede and fall in line. President Roosevelt had to ratify, so did other presidents, certain measures, National Guard being brought in just to escort children to schools that had been integrated. Friends. All right. So we got fallacies, we got conspiracy theory. We know that what I'm telling you, Black conservatives, is an oxymoron. You're probably like, oh God, why is she saying that? Because that's not cool. She's gonna cause more friction. No, I'm not. I'm going to set the record straight, friends. Okay? All right, so let's go with this first. In the Constitution, because we have to realize, remember, unfortunately for those of us who identify as Black Americans, right? Those of us who are part of the diaspora, or we were brought to America via the slave trade. And sometimes we took multiple trips, a couple of caveats, a couple of layovers, not so much as caveats, but layovers. Some of us ended up in other countries, South American countries, and then still eventually arrived here in North America as a result of the slave trade, okay? But we are all alike in that regard. We have that as our commonality. Why am I saying this? You'll see why. So the Constitution in and of itself originally designated, and actually still does, I've mentioned this to you, in parts of the Constitution, there is still a designation that African Americans or Black Americans or Diasporan Americans are still 3/5 human. Now, of course, there have been amendments to the Constitution to rebut and nullify that grossly inappropriate stipulation or statement about beautifully melanated people. But I have asserted, and I will continue to assert, and I will assert here and now, that the Constitution should have been long since revised, not just amended. Amended means that you add some things. That's generally what an amendment is that you add. It usually isn't a subtraction. Normally that will be a revised code or repealed code. A part of it, it's repealed. And the repeal is normally a sweeping repeal. And so that you all have this, let me give it to you as well. So repeal, R-E-P-A-L, definition, you look it up, please. Removal or reversal of a law. So you can, you remove it altogether. And they've done this by chapters often. you'll go in and you'll see an entire subchapter or a chapter is removed altogether, repealed. Okay. Ratified, some of us are not familiar with the term, and that's okay, because that's what we're here for. We're here to grow. There is no elitism or academically here at all. None whatsoever. None whatsoever. So if we get to the point and there's commentary while I am speaking or covering any type of subject matter, and people are talking in the comments and trying to go after one another and saying that, oh, you don't know what she's talking about, so therefore you're an idiot. No, I'm not here for any of that stuff. We are here to elevate all of ourselves. Okay. So why is repeal? Why is Constitution? Why is this all important to the Black conservative conversation? And remember also that I'm also challenging you to look these things up. One of my absolute favorite clients, he was such a enthusiast and a student of the Constitution and human rights, natural rights, and the institution of government and the advancement of civilization. And he just really immersed himself in the laws of American land and land in other countries as well. And so he loved Latin, for the sake of etymology, the origin of words. And we know that that's hyper relevant for the Constitution. And most legal principles is either going to be a Greek translation or a Latin translation. And so what I'm getting at is probator. There was a phrase he'd always use, and it was basically that a thing stands what? True until proven otherwise. Probator, Probetur. Look it up, okay? And so I'm asking that you do the same here, because we can only truly enlighten ourselves. I can share information with you. I know oftentimes we use that term and we say, I'm going to enlighten you. No, enlightenment is something that happens internally. And you're like, oh gosh, because it's 32 minutes and because I want to get into everything. And you're like, no, I've always known enlightened to be da 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 da. All right, so I'm going to pull it up. Enlightenment. It was because I don't want to use tautology. Tautology is when you use the word that you're defining to define it, to articulate the definition of that word. So we're not going to do that. That's the first definition they have, the action of enlightening, or the state of being enlightened. That's not going to help us, right? We want to get into it a little bit further. So this was initially a movement, right? And even before then, it was on the basis of reason and individualism. So individualism means that you've got to do some work there in this enlightenment action, this process. You've got to take some ownership in this process, okay? And it's spiritual, not just academic, just so you're aware. All right, so the Constitution in its original language, we know, designated African Americans as 3/5 human. So the slaves are the ancestors of the Black people now, including myself. Okay, so we were Black. So we're talking about Black. And you're like, what is she talking about? Just follow me, because remember, we're getting to Black conservatives and why that is a contradiction in terms. And why that does not help with the overall thrust of Black Lives Matter, of Black empowerment, of Black unity, of Black generational wealth. It actually further perpetuates division within our culture and our subcultures. Okay? All right. So also in the Constitution, we have two discrepancies that are especially important to this topic of Black conservatives. One being the inclusion or the origin of under God. And you're like, what is she talking about? I'm talking about in the pledge, right? The Pledge of Allegiance, right? To the flag of the United States of America. Even that part was not original. The original didn't include a designation of the United States at all. And it was later changed to distinguish for immigrants between the American flag and their own. Like, so if you're going to come here and you're going to assume that, you're going to become naturalized, you're going to be making a pledge to the United States of America's flag, not coming here and making a pledge somehow through the United States of America to your own flag. Okay? And it's commonsensical when you think about it, but it was stipulated. Why is that important? We didn't have that opportunity for naturalization, if you will. We fought for our freedom from enslavement. So, like Karen Hunter speaks of, and it's not Karen Hunter. I referred to her once before. I cannot think of her name. I'll make sure to include it later. But she's affiliated with Dr. Boyce Watkins. And she iterates the fact that Black America or Diasporan America does not have an identity. You know what I mean? We don't have a country altogether. Because again, if we are descendants from Africa, there are many countries. And it's not completely clear for a lot of us which country is our native country in Africa. Okay? So we can assume, that, and that's why we have African American as our title. But the point I'm making is that we didn't have a place at all, really, in the Constitution. We've been pulling and fighting for that incrementally for decades. So do you understand why, as I continue to iterate, as we fold back the layers of this onion, how having all of these different sub sets of Black America, instead of unifying on our commonality, is completely destructive and completely unproductive to our end goal. Especially where we have such discord between Black conservatives and Black liberal citizens and Black Lord, I'm trying to think of the word. I can't even think of the word. Even between Black Democrats and Black Republicans. And we think of Black conservatives as a subset. And it's often related and connected with Republicans generally. And this is why we have seen this influx in this particular election and in elections before, because they've suggested, and that's just another one of these kind of sensational topics that's getting a lot of media coverage because it's just something to talk about that's different. That's so different from the ultimate goal of every Black empowerment movement, if you will. It's a pinch off. So that's why, if you're wondering why is it that the Black conservatives are getting all of this media attention now, because it's sensational. It's odd. It's odd. And it's going to sell papers, sell publications, because we're going to give them a platform. We don't really care about their thrust. Who really cares? We care that it's different and it's odd. And it causes heated discussions because it doesn't make any sense. It is a contradiction in terms. We didn't even have a political party. We assumed one. We took a side during the Civil War. And we took the most obvious and the most sound side, the side of those who were working toward abolishing slavery. Now we're all concerned about the reasons because they're not completely clear, but the general consensus was that the Union was on board to abolishing slavery because it was inhumane. The general consensus. So to say that, oh, we are definitely Republican or definitely Democratic, I'm going to be honest with you guys, we're really neither of those. Not historically. We've assumed the same disposition as the colloquialism. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And our enemy was the Confederacy. Now, I think my baby, you may be able to hear him, he's trying. So he's trying to find his way into the, no, this is not the time, Asa. This is not the time. Okay, say hello. All right. All right.
Hello,
okay. All right. So when we look at it from that perspective, I hope that you are actually following me here. And we're going to spend about 15 minutes more because I want to make sure that we cover all of this, and you'll see why. Because we're getting these layers pulled back. So the original language was not pro-African American, was not pro-former slave, was not pro-Black diasporans at all. We assumed a side. And that side was, at its inception, they had decided, colonialists, colonists, they had decided that they were republic, one nation, republic, right? Let me read this here. And this is pulled from va.gov, Veterans Affairs, not Virginia. But you can pull up the same information for Virginia's government sites as well. And the Pledge of Allegiance, okay? I pledge allegiance to my flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under God was also not originally in that pledge. Who do you think it was recommended by? A pastor. Not a layperson, not a statesman, not a politician, a preacher. And it was under the reporting that if they included under God, it would inherently include all of the religions, believing that all religions celebrated and worshiped the exact same God. So why do you think we have so much confusion now? Because I'm very sure that even within the Christian religion, the sub-denominations, if I were to hold a forum right now, a buzz session, an open discussion, there would be so many contentions in that room. At the very least, a verbal, heated debate would ensue. Now multiply that on the scale of the religions from different cultures, different ethnic groups that is represented in this country. And so this one pastor thought, and I want to say it was in, let me check here. I'm going to get the date right. And I'll tell you the name of the pastor as well. All right. In 1911. He was born in 1911. I thought it was 1950. I was right. So this pastor, Pastor Glasgow, G-L-A, or Glasgow, Glasgow. He says, I came from Scotland where we said, God save our gracious king. God save our gracious king. And I'm sorry, I think I gave you the wrong. No, he was, Lord have mercy, my apologies. He was born in, Glasgow is a city, and I thought it was. But yeah, so born in Glasgow, Scotland. His name is Pastor Docherty or Dockery, Docherty. And in 1950, he suggested that, hey, we need to insert under God into the pledge. To omit the words under God in the Pledge of Allegiance is to omit the definitive factor in the American way of life. But who decided that that was the American way of life? It wasn't African Americans. Religion was forced upon slaves who were Black. And they were African American. You see the connections that we're making here. People who weren't even considered people. We were property. So who was he talking about? Not us. He was talking about amongst themselves. So our culture, our religion was not ever represented. It was assumed. Even to this day, there are lots of African countries who have assumed Christianity as their religion, and mostly under force. Well, now it seems voluntary. Now it seems like a loving act that we have found the light and that we are somehow enlightened by Christianity. And I'm not saying this to mock God. I'm not saying this to mock religion in and of itself. I'm not saying that. What I'm telling you is that you need to have the real truth behind it all. And some of you have been living in this fallacy, a real life fallacy, a contradiction in terms for your entire life. And now you have full privy in your adult life to change your trajectory, to change how you process information, to change your perspective and realign it with truth. Because a lot of our perspectives are so far from truth that it has become paralleling to mental disorders. I'll give you a note. Hold on one second. I'm going to give you a note on it. Because this is academic. I know some of you are like, but you can't say that. Yes, I can. Just for some of you who are not as familiar. My academic background qualifies me as a behavioral specialist. Behavior, admittedly, when not observed together with the psyche or neurological science for any particular group of people or people in general, persons, individuals. It is not an absolute diagnosis, nor am I attempting to diagnose any one particular person. But what I'm telling you is I'm qualified to make the statement. And the statements have already, and findings and discoveries have already been made in journal articles by those who do possess the full gravity of a full degree in psychology and have the clinical expertise to back it. Okay, so let's keep on going because we got 25 minutes. All right. So now we're seeing how these things are piecing together, and you're wondering, okay, well, dang, we haven't even got to the meat and potatoes of Black conservatism. Oh, yes, we have. Yes, we have. I'm telling you that the term is a contradiction in terms, period. It's a complete oxymoron. It's a complete fallacy. It is, and this is the reason why they have the term imagined communities in leadership studies, in academia. It's called imagined communities. So if you say that I identify as a Black woman in America who has pursued her PhD in STEM, that is an imagined community. Now, when we first look at it, we're like, wait. That sounds really rude because you're suggesting that I just imagined this. I just made it up. I did. Effectually. I've created a subgroup because our original group is living, breathing, speaking, thinking, cognitive life that we call humans. That's our higher level group that we're all seemingly a part of. Your animal kingdom, and then you just keep going down, crustaceans, and keep on going down, right? Single cell organisms, right? You keep on going down, right? All right. I hope you're with me. I know it is a lot, but when we get on the same page, this enlightenment is going to be a beautiful thing. I guarantee. I have all hope. So this pastor in 1950, now mind you, we still were fighting for our basal civil rights, even though we have spiritual human natural rights that even colloquial white settlers, colonists, and the colonial period set a tone for. Hold on, I think my battery, so we got to plug it in. We don't want to lose the battery. Hold on 1 second. And boom, battery's in. And I say colonialist, and I want to make sure because I'm glad that I just thought about that as well. I don't want people to misunderstand that either, because much like an environmentalist and a scientist, too often those groups are misperceived as the same. They're not. And I don't mean this to throw shade on the group of environmentalists who have a passion and enthusiasm for sustainability and environmental protection and all things, positive to being stewards of the earth. That's awesome, but it doesn't make them a scientist. Colonialists were those who supported colonialism. So this is where we start to see the chip off of maybe visitors during that time, maybe even our own, at that time, slaves, former slaves, because we do realize that some of the former slaves actually had land. They actually had a form of freedom. It wasn't absolute freedom. They were still subject at any moment to having that facade of freedom ripped from them without cause. But some of them assumed a disposition similar to colonialists. And it says a person who supports the practice of gaining political control over other countries and occupying them with settlers. And you had that coming from French and Spain. This is why a lot of our social studies and and history, especially wars and settlements, it teaches you about the French and Spain and Britain taking turns at terrorizing the world. Look at the Dominican Republic. Look at Haiti. Supposedly, I'm a part of my native origin. And they used religion as a weapon. They weaponized religion against African Americans who did not originally practice Christianity, who did not even have a full appreciation for the development of the Constitution, who were literally learning as we went and trying to make the best of it to survive and figure out what the hell we were in the middle of and how to get out of it. And that's why we would assume the disposition, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay. Black conservatives, church and state. So here we go. We got the constitutional language. We know there is no under God. And President Nixon, I believe, helped him with that. And President Reagan has further fueled that and further fueled the new emergence of Black conservatism. And the irony is that he was not doing it for the benefit of Black people at all. So why in the hell would Black people then assume that disposition? Why would they say, oh, I want to be a supporter? This makes sense. And I'm saying this in fully understanding that generally most Black conservatives have assumed that title because they will probably want to fight. Some of them would want to fight me or debate me on the nomenclature. Well, you've chosen it. And we have to get to the meat and potatoes of it all. But I can understand generally, scantily, where Black conservatives will say, okay, well, I'm going to assume this title because it best explains my ideals in this kind of gray area of politics and belief system that I want to promote in the political arena. Well, it doesn't make any sense because church and state, there should be a separation. Now, I'm going to read this and you're going to see just how contradictory this is when I read this. And it's best to just read it. And I'm hoping that you hear it immediately when I read it. We are told, and this is from the Time magazine. It's an article, and I'll leave this link as well. We are told that one should avoid discussing two things at the dinner table: religion and politics. Clearly, they have never eaten at our dinner tables. Religion and politics can be polarizing, precisely because they deal with important matters that are deeply personal and close to our passions. But these discussions do not have to be polarizing or combative. Intolerance of another person's faith is a personal choice, not a legal requirement. We are also told that we should not mix religion and politics. Again, this saying has a powerful truth that when religion is used for political purposes, it empties religion of its eternal meaning and becomes just one more cynical method of acquiring power. But there is also a disclaimer hidden in that phrase that sometimes when people say don't mix religion and politics, they actually mean don't bring your faith into the public square where I can see it. In other words, hide your faith outside of your place of worship because we have a separation of church and state. Separation of church and state is too important a concept to be misused, especially not as a tool for silencing opposing views. As a matter of fact, on National Religious Freedom Day, it just might be as important as ever to consider the true meaning of church-state separation and religious freedom. Congress's 1992 resolution that made January 16th as Religious Freedom Day, a designation reaffirmed by every president since, was based on the anniversary of the 1786 passage of the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, originally authored by Thomas Jefferson. This act inspired and shaped the guarantees of religious liberty eventually found in the First Amendment. The text: no man shall be compelled to frequent or support any religious worship, place, or ministry whatsoever, nor shall be enforced in his body or goods, nor shall otherwise suffer on account of his religious opinions or belief, but that all men shall be free to profess, and by argument to maintain their opinion in matters of religion, and that the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities. Do you see how contradictory this is? It's contradictory even in the opening statements, the opining, the opinion of the author. And it's exactly why there is further clarity as to why Black conservatives is a contradiction in terms and does not lend well at all to the unification of Black America, Diasporan America, and our empowerment, our economic viability, our healing, our growth together, our place, our defining who we are in America, and getting a stronghold on our rights, both human, our natural human rights, and our rights as citizens of this country. Black conservatism, or rather just conservatism, it's an ideology on the basis of individual freedoms, right? Traditionalism, which would include traditional gender roles, traditionalism that they have swept into that group, traditional Christian practices, which is odd because it's non-traditional for Blacks to practice Christianity intentionally. We practice Christianity as a mode of survival, and we used it because it was available to us only under the direct supervision of white slave masters. This was the time when we pretended to worship their God, the notion of their God, the God that would agree with enslavement of Black diasporans. We prayed alternatively against our enslavement and them terrorizing us and raping us and killing us, torturing us under this falsehood of an attachment to God's will. We use going to church as an opportunity. This is where we can learn. We can learn to read. We can come together and plan how to manage this. We can come together and work together. We can come together and survive. This was this process. But to isolate yourselves as Black conservatives from the populace of Black diasporans and suggest somehow that you are upholding the truest of belief systems, the most honorable of belief systems that were founded upon principles that completely substantiated your enslavement, is absurd. It is absurd. And there is no good way to say that. It is absurd. So let's say, okay, fine. You've assumed Christianity. You feel like now Christianity doesn't represent white racism. Now Christianity doesn't promote slavery. Now Christianity doesn't promote Jim Crow laws. It doesn't promote segregation. So I'm going to pinch off and I'm going to create a new group and I'm going to call it Black conservatives and say that we are the Black people who have assumed Christianity is good and has a place for Black diasporans at the table. And we're going to put this noose back around our necks and sit quietly beside the Republicans and assume a disposition where now we wield the same, my enemy of my enemy is my friend, against other Black Americans. All right, we got 8 minutes. And I need to get back to, because I got to study. Some of y'all know what I'm studying. But all righty. Liberalism. Because some of us misunderstand that conservatism is a kind of subgroup of, or a pinch off of, or subcategory of liberalism. It is not. Okay, so let's go into that really quickly. Let me also, because we talked about conservatism generally, and now we're getting into specific, like this pinch off. We are Black conservatives and we are valid. Okay. So Black conservatism is a political ideology that presents an alternative to the traditional liberalism of African American political culture. Although African Americans are usually considered to be social conservatives, their politics, characterized by an ongoing struggle for freedom and racial equality, have traditionally fallen on the left of the political spectrum. Our traditionalism is originally rooted in our cultural belief system and practices from Africa. And we gravitated toward any form of traditionalism because of that. We had that type of structure back home, if you will. And we effectively created our own subset of religion from the Christianity even. Trying to remember the things that we had experienced and remember from our native land and knowing what is going on around us and trying to mentally cope with what is going on. What do we do? What should we be? Having a different tongue, even a different language than some of the other diasporans who were put on the same boat as us. We don't know the full complexity of all of that. Trying to figure out, where am I? Why am I here? And I can't even communicate with the people who look like me, who are on this same slave master's land. And when we cope, we pull together that which is familiar. And so the traditionalism of Christianity, of religion in and of itself, was familiar in that regard, because we had high standards. We had standards of civilization, despite all the contrary statements that we were somehow just these savages, uncivilized, uncouth. So gravitated toward that, gravitated toward liberalism. But then when we talk about our civil rights is what it's saying, that's not a very liberal topic. That's a radical topic for us. That's when you see our fist in the air. That's when you see our passion. That's when we no longer want to talk about your God. And that's where the division comes and stays and anchors amongst Black communities around the nation. We even experience this now in the pandemic. You've seen that in TikTok videos. You've seen that exemplified, if you will, in TikTok videos, where the new generation is suggesting that all of the older generations are sitting at home and praying for them, praying fervently, like prayer warriors, instead of being out there physically with them. Let me clarify that as well. Some of us are definitely out there. The ones of us who are not out there, it is mainly because we have children at home. And so our priorities for our children's safety against COVID, and us not necessarily being arrested, because we did all the things that you're doing now, young people, we did then at your same age. A lot of us. So please do not get it twisted. And I hope you see videos like this so that you know that it's not somehow some new thing that you have created, even though it's beautiful and we're glad you finally got off your tails and figured out that this is what we need into longevity, into perpetuity, and that you just can't be dismissive about the things that are going on in this world. We appreciate you getting the hint that we've been dropping. We've been dropping gems. Some of us have become concerned that you weren't picking those gems up. So we're glad that you're picking them up, but you are not. This is not new. This is not novel. And this is why Black conservatism is just, it doesn't make any sense. It's absurd. And then Black conservatives who would not even sit on the side of Democrats. It is absurd that you would then seek a disposition to put Trump back in office for another 4 years. You're planning your own death, your own execution, the incremental ratification, re-emergence of Jim Crow laws, sneaked in under the guise of Christian traditionalism, and having ideals that would seemingly promote individual liberties, religious freedom, but are a far cry from racial equity and justice. I've got to stop here. I think I've clarified I think it's also necessary that we have a part two. I do. And we will. This topic really gets under my skin. It does, admittedly, because it's very difficult to talk to beautiful Black people and say, you don't see this? You don't see the obviousness of this? There is no validity to the Black versus white fight. We need to pull out of that nonsense altogether. Our focus should be on us and our empowerment. And in order to empower ourselves, we must have unity. We must build upon our commonality. Having all of these subsets of Black America just helps white supremacist goals. They laugh at you, Black conservatives. They laugh at you. Republican white racists, they laugh hysterically in your face because they have absolutely no couth. I've seen them at political forums. You must understand. They have no self-dignity either. They're willing to do whatever is necessary for their end goal. So when you hear people say white devils, you understand it's not all Caucasian people, but understand there is a parallel, an eerie parallel to Satan versus God in the white versus Black epic fight that they have been pushing for years. It keeps us divided. It keeps us busy. It keeps us not focusing on the true goal. They're not doing this in Switzerland. Those are colloquially white people, but this is not the norm there. We're going to have a part two because we're going to get into it more. Am I trying to insult you if you are a Black conservative and maybe you just had insufficient information? No. Am I trying to impart sufficient information so that you can make better decisions? Yes. Am I telling you that I think that I am better than you? No. Because to be honest with you, in this type of fight, it can be dangerous for me to look back and offer a hand to someone who is sitting with my enemy as their friend. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. I hope you understand today's session well, and I hope you'll join me for part two. This is Evolve Weekly with Tigress Sydney Acute McDaniel. May I continue to enlarge our thought, expand our understanding and appreciation for one another and our different perspectives, achieve commonality, and not further divide. Have a wonderful Sunday.